Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today's build is about an infinite ability rotation for ultimate Warlock support that has some insane synergy between Benevolence, Lumina, and Boots of the Assembler. I cannot wait to show you guys what this build can do. If you're any of the 97% who are not subscribed to the channel, please consider subscribing. It would mean the world to me. And today's exotic, Boots of the Assembler, with the exotic trait Blessing of the Order. Healing Rifts will create Noble Seekers, which can heal any allies outside of your rift, and Empowering Rifts provide Seekers that provide a 35% damage bonus. When either Seeker type finds an ally, the rift is extended by 5 seconds. Now, Noble Seekers can spawn every 5 seconds and can track allies up to 35 meters away. Healing Seekers provide 75 HP and also begin health regeneration. And next, let's take a look at the exotic weapon we'll be pairing with these boots. Lumina, the exotic 140 hand cannon. Kills with this weapon leave behind remnants. Collecting these remnants allows you to hipfire tracking shot that will heal an ally and provide you and that ally a damage bonus of 35% for 10 full seconds. Those hipfire projectiles will also heal that ally for 100% of their health. But what about the catalyst? The only difference, and you're going to see it right here, I slowed the footage down, is that there's 2 remnants instead of 1. Now, does this make or break the build? That's your decision to make, but having 2, and when you're in a 3-man fire team for a GM, allows you to just instantly hit both of your teammates. Now let's start breaking down the gameplay loop. In this build, the first step is to cast your Rift. Casting your Rift activates Bomber, Outreach, Distribution, and both of our Dynamo mods, giving us both large chunks of super, but also large ability energy. Footage shown here is the solo loop. The team-based loop will be shown next. Step 2. After we cast our Rift and gain the super energy, we're going to use our melee and our grenade to feed ourselves back that Rift energy. When we cast and hit both the melee and the grenade, we're going to get 40% of our Rift back, and we can repeat this loop. Right here you see that second super at 2 minutes 22 seconds, earned in 1 minute and 7 seconds. As for the team-based gameplay loop, it's very similar, but the goal is typically to earn a noble round on a red bar enemy, so you can open with that on a teammate. Then use your abilities, cast your Rift near enemies to get some ability energy back and that huge chunk of super energy. And then when melee and grenade are up, use those to get the Rift back and repeat the loop. Throw noble rounds out whenever possible to buff you and an ally by 35%. Also, remember to grab fire sprites as they help give you some grenade ability energy. Solar aspects. Make sure that you're using heat rises because you can consume a grenade to activate Ember of Benevolence. Touch of Flame to make our fusion grenade deal an additional instance of damage. Then, let's move on to the Solar Fragment. Solar Fragment number 1 is going to be very important because it's going to synergize with both Lumina and Boots of the Assembler. Ember of Benevolence, when we provide Cure, Radiant, or Restoration and Healing to an ally, we will gain 400% additional base grenade, melee, and class ability regeneration. And because Lumina can proc this when we shoot them with a noble round, and because Boots of the Assembler can also proc this as well, we will constantly have this fragment activated. So we will get insane ability energy on top of what we already have. Fragment number 2, Ember of Torches. So, because of Ember of Benevolence, we take this so we can make our allies Radiant and have an additional way to activate this in case our Rift isn't back. Radiant is a 25% weapon damage bonus, so that also helps in the neutral game where we're not inside of our well. I talked about part of the next fragment inside of the gameplay loop, and that's Ember of Searing. I talked about fire sprites, and fire sprites grant 12.5% grenade ability energy, so this is just another way to add more to our regen capabilities inside of the build and put out a little bit more damage with those fusion grenades, which by the way never got nerfed, so they're still as potent as they've always been. And based on the enemy that you defeat, it can be anywhere from 8% up to 25% of your melee back. Now the last thing is a flex fragment because we only have 3 in this build, and you can take your pick. You can go with something like Ashes, Combustion, maybe you want Solace for a longer radiant duration, or you can go with Singeing for an additional 300% additional base class regeneration on scorching an enemy. The choice is yours. Now we're going to go over our armor mods for this build. Starting with the helmet, we have 2 copies of Dynamo. These 2 copies of Dynamo make it so that when we cast our class ability near targets, we're going to get huge chunks of super energy. And you've seen that previously in the gameplay loop section of the video, but that's what those are doing, those 2 copies. And that's how we were getting supers in about 1 minute. And that's still what was happening inside of the GM. That was master content in the GM, still getting 1-minute supers. Now on the arms, 1 copy of Focusing Strike, 1 copy of Bolstering Detonation. The combined use of the melee and grenade is going to provide 40% back to our class ability, which will allow us to use Dynamo again to get more super energy and have that 1 minute and 5-second super. Kinetic Loader is what I find important here because we do have auto loading on the machine gun. If you don't have auto loading, maybe use Reconstruction or something along those lines. But because we need to keep an overload stunned, we may be using Lumina to do that. And if we are hitting a high health target like that, we're going to need to reload Lumina before we get a Noble Round or Noble Remnant floating out there in the air. And I think it just makes Lumina feel better overall. On our chest, we don't need any copies of Charged Up because we're not going with any sort of armor charge or armor surge for weapons. So you can run 1 copy of Harmonic Resistance, 1 copy of Arc Resistance, or Void, or whatever element you're dealing with here. But then in the last column, go with Sniper or Concussive based on the type of thing that you're doing. This weekly activity is the GM that you're seeing footage of, and there's a lot of snipers here with all the Vandals, so I'm running Sniper Resistance with the Arc Resistance for their damage. Then on the boots, our Boots of the Assembler, I am running 1 copy of Solar Scavenger, which takes advantage of the artifact mod Diviner's Discount, so that's why this only costs 1 energy in Season 22. We'll talk about the artifact mods next. Then I have Innervation and 1 copy of Recuperation. We get a chunk of 10% grenade energy and a chunk of 70 HP when we pick up an orb that an ally creates in our fire team. That just helps us out. These aren't essential, but if you wanted to swap these around, you could go with something like Installation instead of Recuperation, and here you could maybe go with Absolution or Orbs of Restoration. Vice versa, you can mix it up, test, maybe even Invigoration. Just depends on what you think you need for your ability loops for some extra additional bonuses. Then on to our bond here. We have 1 copy of Outreach, 1 copy of Bomber, and 1 copy of Distribution. So we already know that the goal is to cast the Rift close to enemies and get that super energy, but Distribution is also going to help reduce these abilities in tandem with Outreach and Bomber. And those abilities, I'm referring to the melee and the grenade. So these are our armor mods that help amplify the loop that we have there. Next, we'll move on to talking about the artifact mods. And I'm really only going to touch on the important ones that you're going to need in this build. The key artifact mods that you're going to want to have are going to be Overload Hand Cannon, Diviner's Discount, Elemental Orb Solar, Overload Machine Guns, Elemental Fury, Refreshing Pickups, Monochromatic Maestro, and Rapid Fire Ranger. Quick overview as to why. For Lumina, to help us because we don't run a ammo finder, so any ammo that we do get, it's going to be scavenged and provide us additional ammo. Elemental Orb Solar, so that we can pick up a solar orb that we make from our solar weapons and get up to 25% ability energy back to our lowest ability. Then Elemental Fury, so our fusion grenade will deal some additional damage. And then Overload Machine Gun for stunning overload champions. This just helps that we aren't just using Lumina for overload and that we have a machine gun capable of stunning overload champions, so we can just let it rip and lay into them with our machine gun. Monochromatic Maestro, just another way to buff up not only our melee, but also that fusion grenade. Rapid Fire Ranger to weaken targets from a distance. That's going to be the artifact mods, and that's going to be a wrap on this build. Honestly, even with the double primary that I used in this GM, I had 191 kills, and I popped the most supers out of anybody in the fire team. I think we might actually be in a Lumina meta, and I'm not going to be upset about it. I was really surprised. After doing a Rain of Fire build with Vex Mythoclast, and then with doing a build of Starfire Protocol with Sunshot, when I brought this Lumina build, I wasn't sure it was going to hold up. But honestly, I think it might be my favorite and the strongest of all three because it has the most neutral game synergy, team play, and the fastest super regeneration. That's just my thoughts on the build. You guys give it a try, and then you let me know how good you think the build is, or whether you don't think the build is that good at all. But make sure you copy everything correctly as I have it so you can give accurate feedback. Thank you guys all for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. See you next time, Guardians.